Dot, 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 dot. Good morning, everybody. This is Grant from State of the Spark, and I'm excited about today's show. We're actually going to be covering the one absolute key to improving your internal narrative, the narrative you have about your head. We're going to be covering a whale wax sculpture by Da Vinci and what science actually says. We're going to be covering how we can breathe air on Mars. And of course, we're going to be covering Morning Cup of Gratitude. That's right. This morning, we're going to be covering the things we are absolutely grateful for. Now, I've got my warm cup. What do you have? You have tea? Do you have coffee? What is it you have this morning? And what is it you're absolutely grateful for? Man, 100%. I am 100% grateful for two aspects of the same thing. Number one, I am so grateful for exercise and working out. Let me tell you something. If you struggle with ADD, serotonin deficiency, hyperactivity, give yourself the hardest workout you can possibly experience, and everything will just come back together. I'm so grateful for that. But what I'm grateful for behind that, or in between that, or around that, or because of that, is I'm grateful that Marissa came to me and said, hey, what's up with this 75 hard thing for real? And we took it on in a modified version. So what I'm grateful for is not 75 hard. What I'm grateful for is native moderate to hard. So we've got pretty much all the rules in place, except I don't have to work out outside for one of my workouts. And what else did we decide? I forget. Marissa's floating around, but it was one or two of those items where it's like, listen, we're reading, we're doing the workouts, we're drinking the water. We did the diet thing. And so I can't recall what the other one was, but what makes it native moderate to hard is that A, we're just starting. We're trying to go easy on ourselves. B, we've got a crazy family vacation coming up. We're going to be visiting family. We don't want to be those people. But really it's that my workouts, one of them won't be outside. So I'm grateful for Marissa coming to me and saying, let's do this thing. And I feel better. I legitimately feel better than I have in what I feel like is like the last year, in all honesty. And it's because of working out, man. It makes a huge difference. So I'm grateful for self-regulation. I'm going to have to work out till I'm an old fart. Marissa says family vacations was the other thing. Yeah, I thought so. I thought that was a thing. But I'm still going to try to stick to it as much as possible. I mean, yeah, we're still doing normie stuff. So that's what I'm grateful for. What are you grateful for this morning? What's getting you out of bed? What do you look forward to the most? I saw Stephanie Colon this morning. She's going to go on a huge Arizona, Colorado drive, Utah drive coming up. That's coming up for her. What are you grateful for this morning? Let me know in the comments below. Love to hear you express gratitude for yourself and for your life and for the things going on. Because let me tell you something. If you don't have gratitude for your story, and we're talking about story and narrative today, if you can't find a point of gratitude, I present for your consideration, your story, your internal narrative is not as strong as it needs to be. So I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for you watching. And hey, I would also be grateful if you shared the show, liked the show, hit the like button, or share this or tag somebody who needs to hear a word of encouragement about personal narrative. Here's Brittany. I am grateful for the bridge. Oh, Brittany, thank you for putting this in front of my radar. Great. Brittany says she's grateful for the bridge local meet and greet at Union Hall. Very much looking forward to that Thursday evening. I absolutely need to put this on the calendar. We got to get back into the meet and greets, got to get back to glad handing and shaking hands. So this is absolutely going on my calendar. Brittany, thank you for mentioning this. I am grateful for Brittany, but I'm also grateful that this is going on because let me tell you something. We built our business. I would be a liar. I would be a hider. I would be a faker if I said our business wasn't launched because of my grit or my genius or Marissa's detail orientation and focus. No. We are absolutely successful because in the early days, Bridge existed, at least as Lakeland business leaders. Lisa Welsh says, grateful for her hydroponic system in the house, and it ain't leaking. That's always good that you don't have an active leak in the house with your hydroponic system. And Lisa, we got to reach out because we don't know what you're doing with these barcodes, sister. So Kiana and I will reach out today and figure out what you're doing with barcodes. But Lisa Welsh, she's just a hustler. She's making it happen. I love to hear your gratitude. That fills me up. Does it fill you up as much? Are you like radiating with gratitude? Dig deep and ask yourself, is gratitude just to say, well, I'm grateful? But do you have a visceral feeling of gratitude? Always search for that. Try to take gratitude deeper, because if we should be living in a state of overwhelm more often than we are, where we're just filled to the brim and we just almost couldn't handle any more goodness in the world, how can we tap that feeling? That's what I'm looking for. That's our bit of Cup of Gratitude. Let's talk about other news. Let's do this. In other news, we've got breathable air on Mars. I don't know if you're excited about that like I am. I'm absolutely pumped that we've been able to do this. Listen, for the longest time, they've been trying to tell us to actually be on Mars, we're going to have to terraform it. To actually be on Venus, we're going to have to terraform it. To actually travel the cosmos, we're going to have to terraform it. And that might be true. We might need to, for long-term settlements, to feel like a normie on Mars, we might need to terraform it. But it's very difficult. It takes centuries to actually do that in a noticeable way. So we covered in a previous show that the Perseverance rover on Mars also brought with it a unit called MOXIE. And this MOXIE stands for Mars Oxygen In Situ Resource Utilization Experiment. Let's just call it MOXIE, right? MOXIE deployed a process where it actually used air. I thought it was actually a soil conversion, a chemical conversion with the soil, but it was actually a chemical conversion with the air on Mars. Now, the air on Mars is 96% carbon monoxide. Yes, you would die breathing it. It's wicked cold. Well, not so cold that you couldn't live it. It's like Antarctic cold, and sometimes it gets really cold, but it's Antarctic cold. So that's actually survivable by humans. It's the oxygen and the carbon dioxide and the radiation and so many other things, but it's not so insurvivable temperature-wise that it's not unrealistic. But the oxygen is a problem. The carbon dioxide is actually the problem. So they deployed MOXIE, and it successfully did make air on Mars. We knew that it was going to try, but now they have successfully. And think about this first. Be filled with gratitude. Our species actually has generated our own atmosphere, our own oxygen on another planet. Not only Mars, a first for Mars, but a first for interplanetary interstellar travel is huge. They can also use this process, they say, to create rocket propellant and creating drop stations around the planet of Mars or any other planet, so that if you were an explorer on that planet and needed oxygen, you could just fill her up. Imagine that. Now, they created 10 minutes worth of air, and over the next 2 years of the mission, they're going to do this 9 more times to test it in different conditions. But I want you to imagine we've got Sir Elon Musk building the infrastructure of basically what amounts to charging stations around the planet of Mars, so that you could take your Cybertruck or your Tesla Model Y and drive around another planet entirely. It can be hermetically sealed. These Tesla vehicles can be hermetically sealed. So imagine you're driving around, you're like, oh, I need to fill up the gas tank or the electric battery, but also let's fill up our oxygen containers. And you just go wherever they're at, and it will process and create oxygen for you on the fly. It's a pretty impressive thought, and it means, hey, you might not have to actually terraform after all. Now, if you want to read more about this, because I try to give you my references, I highly recommend it, because in our lifetime, Eli was over for dinner the other evening, and he reached out and brought us some Chipotle, and we poured him a glass of wine, and we just chatted. It's part of the narrative that we're going to be talking about. The one key to improving your narrative immediately is a little bit of what Eli was up to. But if you want to actually read more, visit the article, study more. We were talking about how powerful it would be in our lifetime. This is what we're talking about with Eli. how powerful it would be in our lifetime to actually go to Mars. This will be possible. Before you and I are too old to go, we will be on Mars, and we could even have the opportunity to get on a flight, and at least once in our life. People are trying to flock to Iceland and the Great Wall of China, and they should be. They should see these wonderful things. But what if you could also, at least once in your life, put your foot on the dust of another planet? I love dreaming about that. Let's talk about whale wax Da Vinci. So this piece of other news is a little bit about a Da Vinci, a supposed Da Vinci, and phrases that do not age well. Now, we have memes about this today, phrases that don't age well. But the founder of the Bode, the German, and I'm probably saying his name wrong, Bode or Bode, the Bode Museum, art museum in Berlin. The founder went on to say at one point he acquired a sculpture in 1909 and said the enigmatic smile, forgive me for that word, the graceful posture and the precise draping means that this could only be a Da Vinci sculpture. And since 1909, it has been hotly debated as to whether or not this sculpture was actually a Da Vinci. Now, the sculpture is a Flora being the Roman goddess of flowering plants. Marissa, we need a sculpture of Flora in our properties so that we can actually freaking grow something. But the sculpture of Flora, and it's a gorgeous sculpture, and it was purchased in 1909 by Wilhelm von Bode. And he, for the longest time, claimed it was a Da Vinci, but it's been hotly debated by another gentleman who said he actually crafted it with his father in 1840. So this debate had gone on, and the museum has held on to this Da Vinci this entire time. Well, modern radiocarbon dating and chemical analysis decided, hey, we're going to crack this thing. So they decided to actually take very small molecular samples and found out that this thing is not made of alabaster. It's not made of stone. It's made of, this is a word that you don't need before 8 a.m. on any given day. It's made from spermaceti. What the heck is spermaceti? It's not what you think. It's a wax from a whale that comes from sperm whales in their head, in their the cranium, if you will, and it's found in bottlenose dolphins as well. But the sculpture is made of this spermaceti and beeswax. It was mixed, both marine and land materials. And so they needed to find a way to separate, because these materials were mixed to create a hard, sculptable substance. So they finally found a modern technique that could actually analyze the molecules, separate the molecules out, and test these things for radiocarbon dating. And yes, it turns out that this thing was actually made around 1840, which lines up perfectly with the other gentleman's claim that this was actually made by he and his father. So phrases that don't age well are phrases where you deliver a degree of certainty that comes from your professionalism, and you won't listen to anyone whatsoever. Whereas a lay person comes along and says, nah, I made it. That's not a Da Vinci. And you don't want to believe it, but it's totally true. So be careful what you say with absolute certainty. If you want a link to see the sculpture, which is actually stunningly gorgeous, and if any professional came to me and said, hey, yo, this is a Da Vinci, I'd be like, all right, sounds like it. You can check out the, that's not even the entire link. I'm sorry. I gave you a half link. Here, let me give you, it's from the Smithsonian, and they cover, there's the whole link, and there's the thumbnail right there for you. You can see that's the sculpture right there in the thumbnail. Beautiful sculpture. And of course, anyone with a degree in the arts and lots of money boldly telling you it's a Da Vinci, I'd believe it too. But don't believe every story you're told. Make sure you craft your own story, which is what we're talking about today, narrative. We've told you a story about being on Mars. We've told you a narrative about being on Mars anyway. We've told you a story about a sculpture. We're going to cover a story today about being in a sauna and what you can learn about narrative. Let's talk about the one key you can get started today to improve your story. Let's talk about it. I hope you're doing fantastic today. I'm doing fantastic today. As I said in my cup of gratitude, and listen, if you're just jumping on the show and you missed cup of gratitude, take a time out, post in the comments, tell us what you're grateful for, tag a friend who needs to learn more about improving their self-talk. Do you know anyone who needs to improve their self-talk? I met someone like that this morning. You see, after a workout, me and Marissa are doing NADU, moderate to hard, as opposed to 75 hard. So we're doing 2 workouts a day, and I went in and got my leg day. I'm quaking in my boots over here. I got done with my workout, and as I do whenever I work out at Just Move, I sit in the sauna for about 15 minutes. I entered the sauna, and there's this younger guy. He's a little younger than me, and he's just sweating. Oh, Jessica says she is ready. She is ready for this lesson. I love it, Jessica. I'm ready to give it. I walked into the sauna, and there's this young man, a little younger than me. I wouldn't say he's a child. He's a little younger than me. He's fit. I mean, guy looks like cartoon Disney Tarzan, right? This was like the ideal about the time that Brad Pitt was doing a Fight Club, and I was like, want to touch the hiney. I love Brad Pitt's physique in that. And then I saw Disney's Tarzan. I'm like, same physique. And I always kind of said I would love it if I could actually work into the physique that was lean and like that. And I love that physique. So I walked in, and this gentleman was dressed like that. He had long hair. He had a goatee. So immediately, you know, I've got a man crush. Got a man crush on this guy. Now, if you walk into a sauna, you can always tell who's been in there for 1 minute versus who's been in there for like a half an hour. And this young man, I mean, he was built. He wasn't shaved like some of these gym rats. He was just natural, and he was fit, and he had his eyes closed, but he was dripping from the sauna. I mean, dripping. And he was leaning forward and fidgeting, and he had a friendly smile. Good-looking guy, friendly smile, but he didn't make eye contact and looked away. But he's just miserable. And I sit down in the sauna, and I love the sauna, and I sit down next to him, and we're sitting there, and he's just fidgeting. And I just strike up a conversation. I small talk with him. I said, hey, you know, are you going for a world record? And I made him laugh a little bit. He just gave me the obligatory laugh. And we got to talking. And I said, I saw you walk in, and you came right to the sauna. Do you try to warm up in the sauna before your workout? He said, no. I work out over at Planet Fitness. I come here for the sauna. And with his physique, I'm like, well, you seem like a professional fitness guy. Like, okay, I believe that. And he said, you see, I love it over there at Planet Fitness because they have all the equipment in purple, and it's kind of ridiculous and over the top and brightly colored. And he said, I do that because you won't get so self-conscious. And I paused him. I said, wait. He said, what? I said, you work out at another gym. You have 2 gym memberships. You work out at another gym. Planet Fitness is known for being inclusive, which is great. I used to work out there as well. And I asked him, I said, you work out there because you're self-conscious. He said, yeah. And you could have several responses. You could chide the man. You could guffaw. You could say whatever. I laughed because I like lightening the mood when someone reveals something. And I laughed, and I said, bro. He said, what, man? I said, you got nothing to worry about. He said, well, I appreciate that, but you never really know. And I come here at 2 a.m. sometimes. And at 2 a.m, these guys have been there throughout the night, and they're just jacked. And I feel really self-conscious. This guy looks like Tarzan from Disney, looks like Brad Pitt from Fight Club or Snatch, looks so good. And he's self-conscious, model worthy. He said he works overnights, and I would not be surprised if he was a dancer or something. This guy looks good. So this is one aspect where I realized, man, you could have what everybody else wants, and your narrative does not allow you to enjoy it the way you might want. Now, maybe he enjoys it, but he's elusive. He's not making eye contact. So I changed the subject, and I discovered another narrative that he's got, that he's overcoming. So we got to talk, and I said, what do you do? And he didn't really share what he did. He said, I got to tell you, I'm making 11 times what I was making before. Because he works the overnights. Said, why do you come here at this hour? He said, I work the overnight. I said, how is that? We talked about the overnights, and it just didn't fit well with him. He said, it doesn't fit well with me, but I'm literally making 11 times what I used to make before. Imagine your pay today. And imagine if overnight you made 11 times what you're making today. What would you do differently? But what if it required you to work in a way that you didn't like, the overnights? So he and I got to talking about money, as we like to talk about, because it's so personal for people. That's why I like talking about money, not because I'm all about money, but because it's so personal to people. So we got to talking about money. And I said, so you've been making 11 times more. You should almost be ready to be financially free. And he said, no. I said, what? He said, I've been working like this for about 5 years. I said, you've been making 11 times your old pay for 5 years? He said, yeah. He said, but I come from a family who doesn't believe money's good. I said, okay. They don't believe money's good. They reject money. I said, okay. But now that I'm making money, they borrow from me all the time. They borrow money from me. And they're my family. And I don't want to not help them out. My little brother's got a few kids, so I'm taking care of him and the nephews. And then obviously when I started making money, I started partying, because isn't that what young men do when they start finally making it? And though making it was miserable and was prison to him, he still wasn't experiencing freedom. And so he expressed what freedom he could. And he said he spent most all of his money the first 2 years. The next year or two, he just started trying to save, but then giving money to family. And in the last year, he finally was able to start putting money away. He's now looking at buying a house. Applause to this man for changing his paradigm. But what a tragedy that he lost 2 or 3 years and more to not only partying and poor narrative, but to the poor narrative that money is bad, from a family that believes that money is bad. And in believing that money is bad, they were always in a financial situation, and they had to borrow from the man who had money. True story. This actually happened this morning. You know, often you and I might feel disoriented and lost in the world. Whatever. We get behind our own goals. We get behind the 8 ball, if you will. Life has a lot of demands, and we just start meeting those demands. And we lose sight of our goals, our sense of self. Remember, goals only have meaning. Think about this. Goals only have meaning because of your personal narrative. If it's your goal to lose weight, you have a narrative about weight, whether you're at a good weight, whether you're at a bad weight, whether you used to be at a certain weight. You have a narrative about weight. If your goal is about travel, you have a narrative about travel. Maybe you used to travel X, Y, and Z. My narrative about semester at sea is a strong narrative in me. So I believe I should be a world traveler. In my good and bad sense of today, if I'm off my goals are about world travel. My goals are about allowing my wife to travel. My goals are also around the fact that I feel bad when I'm not traveling. And all of those things that have meaning only have meaning because of narrative. Think about your goals. Think about your top goal. Can you pick your top goal? Hey, listen, props to you if you can post. There are 5 of you, 7 of you, 3 of you, 6 of you watching this show right now. If I don't see at least 4 of you post your goals, are you even watching? Post your top goal, because this is a challenge. Look at your top goal and ask yourself, would this have meaning if my story was not mine? Brittany is saying, that's heavy. I'm really feeling him this morning. I can't imagine being there now, but I have skimmed along that line for a long time in the past. Same here. And for Brittany, who knows me really well, and Adam, who knows me really well, and Eli and Marissa, who knows me really well. Some of you know me really well. I struggle with money. I don't overspend it. I don't have that problem. If anything, I have too low of a paradigm of worth and value. Now, I don't believe I have a low self-worth. I actually believe my self-worth is completely detached from money, and that itself might be a healthy in a little dose. but I think how far I take it is far too far. I'm feeling it about family and taking care of people. But I present for your consideration the things that have meaning to you. Only have meaning because of narrative. Case in point, as I mentioned, Eli. Eli is a real person now. For those of you who know Eli, you know that when I say that, I think you hear my deep affection for this person. But I didn't always used to say that. When I used to say the name Eli, his name was usually, that young guy. Oh, that angsty kid. But when I say it today, it means something else. What has changed? Not just the experiences of his life. That's not the narrative. Experiences and narrative are different. Narrative is what we choose, what we cherry pick, if you will, from our experiences that have either meant the most to us or shaped us the best, or that we love to retell, or that lift us up, not necessarily always putting us in the nicest light, because sometimes a good story reveals your flaws. Sometimes a good story shares your flaws. So a micro story, Eli was over for dinner and we were talking, and he was telling me about reading Jordan B. Peterson's latest book. And if, for those who don't know, Eli is a philosopher studying psychology. He's going to school for psychology now. That's his story. Has he always been that? No, we could talk about a lot of other things that have been in his experiences. But that is what Eli is. I could tell you that he works a day job at Barney's Pumps. Well, is he just a pump man? Is he just an inventory purchasing guy? No. What is the story and the narrative I told you? He's a philosopher. That's a powerful statement. Who's studying psychology and finishing his degree. Wow, nothing else matters. Barney's Pumps doesn't matter. His job at Crispers doesn't matter. Eli was over at the house and we were talking philosophy, as we do, which is why I love having him over to dinner. He brought over some Chipotle. He was having a glass of wine. And I'm listening to him talk about Jordan B. Peterson's latest book. And he's talking about how important narrative is. And he referenced Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, which should be on the shelf right. Oh, here. If you have not read Man's Search for Meaning, you've missed out on a gem in the world, and it's not too late. Pick up Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Viktor Frankl is the founder of logotherapy. Logotherapy is a form of psychology, or an avenue of psychology, where we talk about meaning. Logo. And we talk about the fact that no matter what you're facing in the past, if you can give things meaning, you can be healed. You can get over your trauma. It's his approach. Now, for those who don't know, Viktor Frankl himself was in an internment camp under the Nazi rule in Germany. He was a Jew. And he often tells the story that as he was going through the most debased challenges, he found a place inside of himself that right up until they take his life, they couldn't take this other thing. And it was his freedom to choose his thoughts, the freedom to give meaning to things. And so Viktor Frankl discovered that I could live in my brain and they cannot take that from me. And he went deeper and deeper and deeper with visualization. And what would he visualize? What was meaningful to him? He would visualize his courses that he would teach his students, that should he ever get out, he will teach them this, and he would have the whole entire lecture in his mind as they were abusing him and torturing him, as he was having to clean out the ovens and do traumatic experiences. And is it a form of dissociative disorder? Maybe to a point, but he directed that in a healthy way to his lectures. Now, Eli was retelling this story. So we have a little inception here. Eli was telling the story and reminding us of it. And he said, Viktor Frankl was all about meaning. But those stories he was telling himself would not matter if his narrative about who he was as a teacher, as an intellect, as a person under the Nazi regime. It wasn't just the experiences, but the story that he extracted from previous experiences that gave the visualizations and goals meaning. So Eli leaves off of Viktor Frankl's story, and Eli says, I believe narrative is more important than meaning. And then I countered, Eli, I believe narrative is the only thing that gives meaning. Meaning. Think about that for a moment. Your personal narrative, whatever you think is important to you, has come from some form of narrative that you have told yourself. So the question is, are my goals good? Do my goals alleviate suffering for myself and those around me, or do they increase suffering? So we need to assess our goals. Why are our goals important to us? Because of narrative. Often when we feel lost around our goals, and I began this thought earlier, often when we feel lost and so far away from our goals, I present for your consideration, you're actually no further from your goals. It's rare. Maybe you have a goal to put away $100,000 to buy a real nice investment property. Well, you could have a financial setback and you go from the 90,000 you saved down to 80. Okay, maybe you're further from your goals. Maybe you had a goal to be 178 pounds, which is my fitness goal. That would be fantastic. But hashtag COVID, and I've been hovering around 215 for way too long. Yeah, I'm a little bit further from my goals, but not that much further. I present for your consideration when your goals feel a million miles away, you've lost touch with meaning of what's going on in your life right now. You've lost touch with the narrative you've chosen. You've gotten in touch with the negative narrative. Oh, I've been a victim. Oh man, all this stuff has done this to me. Wait. When I was a young man and I believed in God, and I would say to people, I don't believe in God in the same way today. But when I believed in God, and this is a luxury of the faithful, whether it's Christian or Muslim, when you believe in God, you always know your true north. You could even say if you believe in science truly and deeply, you always have a true north of sorts. And when calamity hits, you have a rubric to address it with. When you have a setback on that savings you had and the savings gets pulled back, if your kid gets sick, your job lays you off, you eat too many Twinkies and you weigh just a little too much, and your goal feels a million miles away, you're losing track. Now, when you're a faithful person, when you're in the faith, you can say, well, let me look for what God is doing in my life. This is a luxury of being a person of faith. Let me look at what God is doing in my life. So if I lose a job, when one door closes, another one opens, and you start being a good finder and you start looking for what's going on in your life. If you're a scientist and you lose your job, you start analyzing and go, I can improve. And this idea of science, this is an opportunity for me to be better. I'm not trying to pit science against religion per se. I'm trying to point out that when you have strong faith in something, what you really have faith in is narrative. Brittany jumps in here and says, I'm usually feeling unsatisfied with my goals, but at the same time, I don't feel like I'm living as my higher self and fully trust that in my 40s, I'll have a solid vision that I throw all of me into. This is a vulnerable thing. I usually feel unsatisfied with my goals. And the question is, are you feeling unsatisfied with the type of goals you've set? Man, I'm unsatisfied that I did not set the right goals. Are you feeling unsatisfied on how you're progressing towards those goals? That would be worthwhile explaining. But at the same time, I don't feel like I'm living as my higher self and fully trust that in my 40s that I have a solid vision that I throw all of me into. And this is the thing. Sometimes vision is clear and sometimes vision is not clear. And the phrase fully trust, when you have faith in something, when you have faith in a God, when you have faith in science, in self-improvement or engineering your life, engineering, whatever you're facing, the problem, work the problem. If you don't fully trust, as Brittany says here, or have faith in something, when vision gets unclear, because vision does get unclear. Vision is coming from the Germanic root wissen, which means to what in the ancient Germanic, which means what I know about my future. Sometimes it's not clear. So we have a luxury when we have faith. We have luxury when we believe in something. Brittany says the goals now are small and achievable. And I'm with you. As we get older, we try to give ourselves these atomic habits, these atomic goals to move us forward, to breadcrumb it forward. And we start to question. We do need to believe in something bigger. We do need a true north. And so if you have been in a type of season that Brittany has been in, if you have been in a type of season that most people in the pandemic have been in, if you've been in the type of season where you're questioning your faith, you should question your faith. Absolutely. But you should do it in a way where you come out stronger. You should do it in a way where you do come out believing in something more. You do need small, achievable goals. You got to. It gets you through a day. But what gets you through a season? Small goals, achievable goals. Me hitting the gym twice, 75 hard or Nadu moderate to hard, will get you through the days and the weeks. But what will get you through the seasons? A narrative, and a narrative that points to what is meaningful to you. You know, Joseph Campbell said you should graduate from church. We're talking about it's easy when you believe in God. It's easy when you believe in science to see some calamity or challenge or the pandemic and say, what's God going to do in me? And that phrase just feels good to say. Even when I'm saying it to this microphone, it feels really good to go, hey, man, I don't know what's going on with X, Y, and Z, but God's got a plan. But when you don't have that, and as Joseph Campbell said, but later in life, you should return to the faith of your youth because the symbols have meaning. Your role to play, part of what this symbol means here is the roles you have to play. They're good. They contribute. So we need small goals, but we also need massively larger goals. Massive goals get you through the tough seasons, the winter seasons, the radiate seasons. So it's in this dilemma that I point out. Eli is talking about this. Hey, fun fact, I don't know if people know this. For those who haven't read a Bible in a while, all of the ancient prophets, when they were moving on, when they were giving over the mantle to the younger prophets, they would stand up and they would own their narrative and they would gather all the people to them and they would retell their story. Their last act, they've done the prophetic. If you read the minor prophets, they had all of this life experience. They put up with the Philistines. They put up with the this, that, and the other. They've seen magic happen in their day. And their final symbolic act was to retell the story, to craft the narrative. I told a story last week about moon trees, and the story moved Laura Gardner and Brian Gardner's family so much that they got into a vehicle, spent gas money, spent time, which is so precious, took their kids away from their normal hub of vacation, drove 2 miles to experience an adventure that I had relayed. Now, I was thinking about this and realized this is what the media does. They craft a story and it gets people to get in their car and drive places. They tell a story and it makes people get in the car and go places. This is how powerful story is. More so, to Eli's point, more so than meaning. So what is the one thing I recommend you do right now? Hang on. Let's interrupt and time out. Lisa Welsh says, I write 10 goals a year and work on those. I usually have a few large goals, but I also incorporate some totally practical things I need to do. I haven't tested a goal lately, though. I don't know what that last part means. I haven't tested your goals or challenged or maybe updated your goals. I'd love to know what you mean there, Lisa. That's awesome. So to Brittany's point here, our goals have become, the older we get, the smaller, more achievable our goals get. But we have to be reminded that to set big goals, we need to start not with the goal. We need to remind ourselves of our narrative. What's your story? No, not your experiences. Don't just recount your experiences. What's your story? How do I do that, Grant? I'm often asked, how do I write my own story? Because my experiences are what they were. Grant is a master storyteller. I often joke with everybody, I'm everybody's best wingman. You want to have a good time some night. You want to meet a new people. You want to expand your circle. Invite me out for drinks at that new place you want to hang out. And tell me a little bit about yourself, and I will be your hype beast. I love telling people stories. Grant, do you tell lies in your story? Do you spin the truth? Do you use creative license? No. And yes. I cherry pick in order to craft the most inspiring story. No, I don't always paint you in a good light. Sometimes I tell your flaws because it's a better story. And if it's a better story, it has more meaning. Lisa Welsh says, I haven't set any goals lately. I feel you, Lisa. It's time. Set those goals. So I say all that to say this. What's the one key? Let me wrap this up. What's the one key you can do today? Because it's at the nexus of recounting. This act that I'm about to share with you is at the nexus of recounting just the experiences. This is just the stuff that happened, but then spinning it or cherry picking it or honing it and crafting it like a wax sculpture, honing and crafting and extracting the story in order to extract the meaning, in order to point your nose to your true north, towards your goals. And you can guess at what I'm going to say at this point. I'll give you 3 seconds to guess. It's journaling. Journaling, my friends. It's journaling. In a journal, when people say, I don't know how to journal, they just start writing what happened yesterday or this week. I have shared in one of my previous shows, scroll down the shows, look at my YouTube channel to get the show on journaling, because I talk about journaling. And what I talk about in my personal journal, even though my faith about the definitiveness of who or what is God is totally questionable, and I would confess that, I still pray to God. I do, just like I used to. I still journal. And when I journal, I write what happened, and then I try within the journal. I literally type this, and I say, what does this mean, God? And I try to listen like I did when I was steeped in the church, because Joseph Campbell said you should graduate from church, but then he followed up and said you should return to the faith of your youth, because these traditions and these mechanisms, they serve the human mechanism so well. A journal isn't just meant to be, dear journal, this happened yesterday, and Billy's a poop head. You're going to capture that, but you're going to take a pause and you're going to ask yourself, dear oneness, dear self, what does this mean? What's the story? The story started here. And when you start to strip away the details and start looking at the principles, well, I woke up frustrated. I encountered a challenge. That challenge I navigated like X, Y, and Z, and whoa, I'm stronger for it. Sometimes you can extract the myth or the narrative by stripping out the details. A journal is meant to recount, of course, but take a moment at the end of your journaling to actually dialogue with your spiritual self, your deepest spiritual self. And whether you believe it's you, whether you believe it's oneness, whether you believe it's the Kraken, whether you believe it's God, whether you believe it's science, go and talk to that thing. And literally write a dialogue. What does this mean? What is the most, and then pause and listen. Now, in writing circles, we call this hypnotic writing, where we try to put our conscious mind away and listen to what our soul is saying, to listen to what our unconscious mind is saying. I believe your journal should be part experience capture, part dialogue with your deepest spiritual self and trying to listen for the story. What happened and how does this contribute to my story? Who am I? And then to write this. I took this so far once. I wrote an entire few chapters called something that I call success fiction. And I wrote my future based on my past. I wrote where I came from. I wrote some of the meanings that it was for me. And then I wrote where I wanted to end up. And that's how I came up with some of my earliest goals. Carrie says, great way to reflect and assess, to tune in. And then she goes on to finish and say, tune into our subconscious. We call it in writing circles, as it applies to just writing fiction, hypnotic writing. But the tactic is still valuable, because when you write your goals, when you write your narrative, are you writing fiction? Yes, this story based on actual events is what your journal should be. This story based on actual events. And as you extract the things that are important, you'll realize that they are building on previous stories. I encourage you to do this one thing. Good morning, Carrie. She drops bombs on us and then says good morning. I appreciate that, Carrie. I hope you're doing great. I present for your consideration that journaling is a spiritual act. Spelling comes from casting spells, right? Who said that? Was that, I think Jessica posted that the other day. Spelling, watch your words, and spelling is literally the act of casting spells. And that's why writing was considered reserved for the priesthood. To write was reserved for the priesthood because it was so important what you write down. Now, in our modern society where everyone should be literate and everyone should be able to write, we've demystified it so everyone's just writing. Be careful what you write because you are spelling. And in spelling, you are casting spells over your life. In the way that you are adding story, a layer of meaning and story to your life. So the key that I'm leaving you with, after my layers and inception layers of stories, the key I'm leaving you with, please, before you just jot goals down, which are good, take a minute to journal so that you're capturing the experiences that have been going on in your life. Just capture them. Then have a section where you capture the overarching story. The overarching story, so that you can extract meaning and goals. Jared, too long for this one section, so I'll actually read it. There's something really deep about this narrative, talking about self-talk. I present for your consideration that the longer we move along our human journey, we need more than self-talk to bring out our stronger, better selves. In that, I would offer that there's nothing luxurious about faith. It's inherently unproven. Belief doesn't always give certainty, but isn't it good to realize there is always something greater than ourselves? 100% journaling is a great solution for the soul, for the long haul of life. Absolutely. And the narrative component itself is only a stepping stone, but we skip it. We just set a goal. I want abs. Why? How does that contribute to, how does that extract it from your story? And where does that lead you in your story? Story is absolutely beautiful. Jared, thank you for these words. They're very thoughtful. And for those who can't read it all here in the video on YouTube, if you're on YouTube or one of the other streaming services, jump over to our Facebook page and you can see Jared's full comment. Fantastic thoughts, Jared. So guys, I leave you with this. Please consider your narrative. Please consider something bigger than you that Jared Yates is getting at. Am I telling you to believe in God? I'm telling you to believe. Believe in an unnameable. Believe in an unknowable. And if nothing more, believe that you have a purpose. And when you believe that, as calamity hits, as challenges hit, whether you're setting your small goals like Brittany was alluding to, or whether you're setting the big goals that Lisa was talking about, or the long haul of life as Jared was talking about, no matter which context, when you look at the narrative at large, and to Jared's point, if you think about it, the narrative has begun long before you. I tell Eli quite often, and I'll wrap with this and let you guys go. I tell Eli in our philosophy talks, I believe the human race, the species, is giving birth to a new breed of thinkers, a new breed of thought purveyors, a new breed of artists, if you will, who are really trying to help this species transition. There's a narrative. Now, you could go to the God thing and say God's revelation has been unfolding, and we need these people who are wrestling with faith. Carrie and I were talking about very personal things as it related to faith and lifestyle and what's going on. I believe this species is giving birth. I believe Carrie is in the right place at the right time with the right challenges to help others in the species move forward. I believe that the dialogues Jared Yates and I have had over the years about faith and God, I believe these people who are wrestling with spirituality and its context today, I believe there's a whole layer of thinkers and inspired beings who are being birthed by the species, by the time and era, which transcends you, which means if you're wrestling, Brittany confessed she was wrestling with the smallness of her goals. I believe people who think that way were born for a time such as this, which is taking from a scripture. Your narrative began long before you were born. And if you can contextualize that, then the challenges you face and the goals you set have layers of meaning. Meaning is the fruit of a good, strong story, which is why I continue to tell mine and why I encourage you to continue to tell yours. I love you guys. Have a great day. If you want to continue this conversation, I would love this dialogue in the Facebook Goals and Gratitude group. But no matter what you do today, remember the mission, the narrative, because Spark citizens, I believe, have a high number of people that I'm talking about that the species is giving birth to. Spark citizens and State of the Spark are these type of people who are finding one another in the world because we were born for a time such as this to wrestle with and try to answer, or at least lay the groundwork for future generations to answer the questions that the species is facing right now. Have a great day. Remember to ignite your own life of explosive significance.